Hi, everyone. As mentioned in class, we have our final exam Tuesday, May 3rd at 9 a.m. in person. So the exam will start promptly at 9 a.m. and anyone who is late will not be able to take the exam as it is a distraction to others. So planning and strategy are important lessons we learned in this course. And so I'm going to go ahead and expect you to incorporate those things that you learned and get there on time next week. Now, if something tragic does happen, you are sick, you get a flat tire, I will provide a makeup exam. However, it will be for reduced 25 points or 25%, excuse me, 25% deduction. The makeup exam will be a verbal exam. It'll be over Teams. So I'll ask you the questions virtually and you'll have to provide me those answers. So it will also be given either a Wednesday or Thursday of next week on Teams around my schedule, not yours. That's because I'm not always available around your schedule. And so I will go ahead and provide that to you if something tragic happens. Again, it will be a 25% deduction. Now, the final exam is worth 200 points out of 1,000. So it will not be the reason for failing the class if you miss it. Now, it could be the reason you go from an A to a B or a B to a C, but it's certainly not the reason why you failed the class should you fail because you missed the final exam. Technically, there are 800 other points that might cause that failing grade. And so the final exam will only include a handful of modules, modules 1, 2, 4, 10, and 11. And all questions are coming from the PowerPoints. Now, if you want more clarity, I can assure you go ahead and look at the study plan or the textbook. Feel free to do that, but everything is coming from the PowerPoints because the PowerPoints actually pulls its information from the textbook. There will be 50 multiple choice questions, true, false, and fill in the blanks. So there is a good number of fill in the blanks. Just make sure that you are prepared. And so you can't bring your notes. They must be handwritten, however. So you can write front or back. The last time I only allowed students to have one sheet of paper front and back. This time I decided that you can have more than one sheet of paper just because I've decided it's okay. All right, so not one piece of paper, excuse me, you can bring notes, but they must be handwritten. They cannot be typed. I also suggest you start reviewing this information and you're not cramming Monday night to get it in. It will take you about 2 to 3 hours to complete at least your notes for the exam. So don't wait till Monday night. And the questions are pretty straightforward. They're not intended to trick. So if you prepare, you'll do very well. And that's pretty much it. Again, as I mentioned, I did have several students who failed the final exam and it brought their grades down. So I had quite a few students who had a strong A going into the exam. They did not prepare. They walked in with no notes. They failed the exam and their A went to a B. So that actually happened to quite a few students. There were also students who were very well prepared and did extremely well. Last, please let me know if you have any accommodations through DSS for test taking. I'll need to go ahead and schedule that. That'll be on the same day, same time, same day. I just need to schedule that over in the testing center. If you have no idea what I'm referring to when I'm talking about the DSS or accommodations, then it does not apply to you. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the study guide. So what I suggest you do is just write out on your notes, go right down the list here. So module 1, for instance, I would go and look at the PowerPoint and I would write out the definition of management. Now, there were a couple of different slides that had different definitions of management on there. So making sure that you have a really good understanding of that definition of management, because you don't know if it's going to be a true false question. You don't know if it's going to be multiple choice, or it could be a fill in the blank, or you write it out. So making sure that you have that information covered. 2 aspects of management. We talked about the 2 aspects of management in that first module. The 4 functions of management and their definitions. And so we spent a lot of time in that first module talking about the 4 different functions of management and their definitions, making sure that you have those 4 functions, write out their definitions, because I assure you there are not only questions about what those 4 functions are, but you will need to be able to identify or write out those definitions. There are two types of plans. Now, there are more types of plans depending on what course you take. I teach another class, Business 110, and they're actually talking about all the different, there's 4 or 5 different types of plans that are covered in that class. So please make sure that you're looking, if you're taking 110 and 137 at the same time, it could be a little bit confusing. Please make sure you are only looking at 137 for this exam. And so in this class, we studied the 2 types of plans. Go ahead and be able to identify those 2 types of plans and even be able to write them out, their definition. Now there's different types of managers and their roles, especially in a vertical hierarchy where you have, leaders at the top and then it goes all the way down the chain. So making sure that you know not only the types of managers, but also know their roles and who's responsible for what. That will help you tremendously. I know there's at least a question on there as well. And then also being able to identify characteristics of a good manager or what makes up a good manager. That's module 1. Module 2, please be able to define the 4 management theories. We talked about 4 in detail, right? Not only be able to identify those 4 management theories, I also want you to be able to define each of those 4, and more importantly, who was involved with each type of management theory. So there are quite a few questions that could be asked here. So let's go ahead and think about this for a moment. So the different types of management theory, well, there are 4. I'll give you one example of scientific management, right? So scientific management, we studied that. That's one of the 4. I'll throw you a little information there. But underneath scientific management, you had several people who were responsible for creating those theories. So who are they, right? And who's responsible for what? Now, and even under scientific management, you had maybe 2 or 3 different individuals underneath scientific management. I'm not going to give you the exact number, but you had several. Understand the difference between person A and person B, because they are different. And so all of that information should be on your slides. Let me go ahead and back up for just a moment. So for module 1, there are 16 questions that are asked of module 1, 16, yes. And so it's important for you to know all of module 1. Well, I put a big emphasis on module 1 because it's an overview of what we covered for the rest of the class, right? So module 1 is always that introduction to whatever subject you're studying. In this case, it was management. So it provided all that information. For instance, the 4 functions of management were covered in module 1, but there also had different modules. I don't recall those modules off the top of my head, but those 4 functions had their own module. So let's say the first function was module 3 or 4, and then the second function might have been 4 or 5 module, whatever. But just understand that I took a lot of the information off of module 1 because it was kind of repetitive in the different modules. So 16 questions under module 1. Module 2 has 9 questions. Module 4 has 8. And then module 10 has 13 questions. And then last, module 11 has 4. Actually, no, let me reverse that. Let me strike all of this information. I'll start over. Module 1 has 16 questions. Module 2 has 9 questions. Module 4 has 8 questions. Module 10 has 4 questions. And module 11 has 13 questions. One more time. Module 1 has 16. Module 2 has 9. Module 4 has 8. Module 10 has 4. And module 11 has 13. Now, I'm hoping that adds up to 50. I'm sure it does. If it doesn't, that's okay. I counted them by hand, so it's somewhere around that number. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at module 4. So module 4 has 8 questions. So you'll need to know the definition of strategy, definition of strategic management. What is a situation analysis or a situational analysis? What is an industry analysis? Why is strategy important? You'll also need to know the common frameworks for evaluating the business environment, and then be able to give a situational analysis example. So for instance, common frameworks for evaluating the business. What are they? Well, there's PESTEL and Porter's 5 forces, VRIO, right? So not only are you going to need to name those, but you'll also need to know a little bit about each of those frameworks and what they do, what they evaluate exactly. And then last, of course, example of what a situational analysis is. So I asked the definition of situational analysis. I'm going to go ahead and fix that now. And then be able to provide an example of that. All right, number or module 10, know the difference between leadership and management. So you will need to know the definition and be able to provide the difference between leadership and management. So it'll have a statement and then you have to circle, is that leadership or is that management? All right, that last module, module 11, is motivation. Hopefully by now you are getting the motivation to do well in this class. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. There are 13 questions on motivation. So making sure you understand those different motivational theories. So that's important. There are different types of motivational theories, just like there are different types of management theories. There are different types of motivation theories. We spent a lot of time going through these different types of motivation theories, making sure that you understand the different types of motivation theories and their definitions, specifically their definitions. So for instance, what looks at motivation as a process, that's one example. What is another one? Describes motivated behavior as individuals' efforts to meet their needs. So just making sure that you understand the definition of the different types of motivation theories. And I'm looking, right? And that's it. You don't need to know who's responsible for each. I will give you that. There is no questions on who is responsible for each of the motivational theories. I don't see any names associated with those. So you don't need to know who is responsible for each motivational theory, but you do need to definitely know the definitions of those motivation theories and what it, and really their definitions. All right. Well, that wraps it up. Again, I assure you, if you plan accordingly and do what you need to do, you will do well. I will see everyone next Tuesday, 9 a.m. Don't be late.